You're on.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. This is Dan Richard, Chair of the Authority Board. Before we begin, we've got a notice public meeting session here in Sacramento and at 2 remote locations. And actually, why don't we start with the Secretary calling the roll.
Vice Chair Schenck.
Here.
Vice Chair Richards.
Here.
Mr. Umberg.
Here.
Mr. Burns. Mr. Hartnett.
Here.
Mr. Balganorth.
Here.
Mr. Rossi.
Here.
Chairman Richard.
Here. And I'm at the noticed location in Rockland, Maine. There are no members of the public here. Vice Chair Schenck, you're at a remote location that's been publicly noticed. Are there members of the public?
No, there are not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so if the minutes could reflect that there are no members of the public at either of those 2 sites. There is, I believe, we have a public comments session before we get to the next agenda item.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman, and we have one member of the public who has submitted a comment request.
Okay, Vice Chair Richards, if I could ask if you could preside over the receipt of that public comment at this point, we'd appreciate that.
I will now open the public comment session of this meeting. Public comments will be limited to 2 minutes, and we have one green request, and that's from Dan Dolan. Mr. Dolan.
Thank you, Vice Chair Richards. My name is Dan Dolan, Martinez, California. I represent myself, and I'm here to advise the authority of 4 points that I think are important that I've included in a May 28th letter to the board. This letter was also faxed this morning to Governor Jerry Brown. You might recall from our Fresno meeting, Mr. Richards, that I asked you to give a note to Chairman Dan Richard regarding a concern I had that, if acted upon, would be favorable to the authority, and that dealt with Joe Smidian's Natural Resources and Environmental Committee studying the AB 1235 bill that has to do with decoupling the indemnifications that the $1.7 billion redevelopment agencies had. They had indemnities in place with DWR and California Hazardous Waste, as well as federal EPA. And these are valuable indemnifications that could, with state legislature approval and signed by the governor, those rights and benefits could pass to public agencies, including high-speed rail. That was point number 1. Point number 2, I mentioned that in 1869, 143 years ago, Governor Leland Stanford, who at the time was Executive Vice President to Central Pacific Railroad Company, in his wisdom on all his deeds to contract and finance company of San Francisco and Sacramento, had the wisdom to have a corridor 400 feet wide along the main track for the first transcontinental railroad. And with that 400-foot wide piece, they were able to put in railroad hotels and park reserve for scenic purposes, and you may want to do the same thing. My third point is to remind you again that presently, as conceived, 130 miles only has $12 million worth of title insurance, and I recommend that the board approve and initiate negotiations with Stewart Title Guaranteed to get $130 million to $1 billion title owners policy with endorsements that will protect you on all the total costs of acquisitions and the mitigation expense with eminent domain.
All right, Mr. Dolan, can you try to finish?
Okay, yeah, my last point is for your benefit. I realize you're interviewing and seeking a capable CEO of international or transportation rail engineer experience, and I also wanted to recommend that perhaps you should consider having a second person hiring another superstar, but this one as a high-powered bond salesman on Wall Street and an investment banker.
Mr.
who
Dolan,
generated
please
excitement.
try to finish up.
That's it.
Thank you
I just
very
wanted to
much.
include,
Thank you.
to not put everything on the burden of your CEO.
All right, thank you, sir. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak? Seeing no one, then the public portion of this meeting is closed. Mr. Chairman, it's back to you.
Okay. Thank you, Vice Chairman Richards. I appreciate that. And at this point, we move to the next item on the agenda, which is related to the hiring of CEO. I'd like to request that the board enter into a closed session here for a very brief time. We'll come back into open session. So the board will now enter in a closed session into the room just off of the main room there in the Sacramento City Hall chambers. And Ms. Shank and I will call in if somebody can email us or call us with the phone number. So we'll close we'll go into closed session at this point and return to public open session in just a few minutes.
Should be good to go.
Okay, are we ready?
Yes, we're ready, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we're returning from closed session into open session, and the purpose of the closed session was further discussion about the selection of our CEO. So let me make a few comments about the status of the board's decision-making process here, and then seek the sense of my colleagues on the board. Since the time when Roelof van Ark announced his resignation, which was earlier this year, our then chairman, Tom Umberg, had established a process to begin the search for a new CEO for the high-speed rail organization, recognizing the significant milestones that we're about to achieve in terms of moving forward into the construction phase. We felt that it was very important to cast a wide net, and Chairman Umberg did that with the procurement of a search selection firm, and asking that firm to conduct a search that was far-ranging and would include people from around the country who would express an interest. There was significant interest in the position in terms of a number of applications that were submitted to the search firm. The search firm culled through those and provided to our board a smaller list of highly qualified individuals whom the search firm thought would be of greatest significance as we made this selection pick. My colleagues and I on the authority went through those applications and chose a smaller number of individuals to interview. And we did interview a number of individuals as a board, and those interviews occurred within the last 2 weeks. At this point, having gone through the process of a wide-ranging search, a professional search firm nominating a number of individuals for our consideration, for our board to have looked at those persons and to have interviewed people, I think we're now at the point of making a recommendation for a selection. And I'd like to open it up to board members at this point. These selections must be done in public. And let me turn to our senior vice chair, Vice Chair Schenck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me ask procedurally your preference. Would it be appropriate for me to make a motion at this time, which may or may not be seconded, and then have discussion, or do you want to have discussion prior to the motion being made?
I think at this point, given the nature of the deliberations that the board has had, that it would be appropriate for you to make a motion.
Thank you. I welcome that. So I will then take the opportunity to make a motion, and I do this with a great deal of pride, because I know this individual, having hired him once before, that we select Jeffrey P. Morales as the next executive director of the High-Speed Rail Authority.
And before we have discussion, is there a second for that motion? Was that Mr. Rossi?
Yes. Yes, it was.
All right. And prior to discussion, let me just make one point clear to any of those who may be listening. It's been pointed out by our general counsel that the statutory description of the position refers to an executive director, which is why Ms. Schenck made the motion in that form. It has become custom at the High-Speed Rail Authority, for reasons that precede my tenure, that this position is referred to as the Chief Executive Officer or CEO. So those terms, executive director and CEO, may be used interchangeably. One is the official statutory position. The other is, by custom, the leader of the staff organization there.
That's exactly correct.
Members, are there other comments, other nominations that other members would like to comment on at this point?
Well, if there are none, I would like to just add that, again, I think that the search firm did an excellent job, both now and previously when we had hired Roloff Van Ark. So we've had the opportunity to see a wide array of people from many parts of the world, and I am confident that Jeffrey Morales will do an outstanding job. As I say, I had occasion to engage his services once before as the head of the California Department of Transportation, where he did a superb job leading that organization. And I will just say that knowing that and you'll be commenting on this, Mr. Chairman, that we're going into negotiations, he's a pretty tough negotiator. So that going forward, that will be a good thing for us.
Thank you, Vice Chair Schenck. Other members wishing to make comments at this point?
Mr. Chair, this is...
Yes, Mr. Hartnett.
Thank you. So it would be my expectation then that if this motion is passed, then we have selected Mr. Morales as the CEO, subject to only the board committee that you've previously described coming back to us with the recommended actual contract document of employment that we would be presented at a public meeting, so that as a ministerial action to adopt that and complete the process in that manner. Is that correct?
That is correct, and this would be my expectation. We're at a critical time for the High Speed Rail Authority, and in addition to finalizing a contract with them that addresses terms of compensation and start date and so forth, it would also be my expectation that the committee that we've asked to finalize this, Mr. Rossi and Vice Chair Richards, would also work to bring back to the board a set of performance objectives. I think as we move into this new phase, as we're trying to make sure that we are not only securing funding, but moving through the procurement process, we have 5 international bid teams that are very seriously preparing bids to be submitted in September. We have a number of issues along the alignment, whether it's in the peninsula or through the Central Valley, through Fresno, in Kings County, Bakersfield. There's a lot of work to be done here. Plus, I think all of us on the board are acutely aware of the number of other top-tier positions that must be filled at the authority, and that'll be a principal concern of the CEO as well. So, Mr. Hartnett, my expectation would be that as we finalize this arrangement with Mr. Morales, if that is how the board votes in a few moments, that those matters be discussed as well and brought back to the board as part of any contractual arrangement with him. Other members of the board wish to make statements at this time?
I don't think there are any other comments, Mr. Chairman.
Well, hearing none, then I would say that we have a motion before us, which I would describe as that the High Speed Rail Authority Board will offer the position of Chief Executive Officer or Executive Director, excuse me, to Jeffrey P. Morales, and that we will negotiate the terms, conditions, and start date and performance objectives of his contract to be presented to the board in its next public session. And if that wording is acceptable to members, then
It is.
Then I'll ask the Secretary to call the roll.
Vice Chair Schenck,
Yes.
Vice Chair Richards,
Yes.
Mr. Umberg,
Aye.
Mr. Burns, Mr. Hartnett,
Yes.
Mr. Balganorth,
Aye.
Mr. Rossi,
Aye.
and Chairman Richard.
Aye. Well, congratulations to Mr. Morales. Let me also thank my colleagues for letting me call into this meeting and for taking time out of their day, and but more particularly for the very diligent efforts on behalf of everybody, starting with Tom Umberg in his role as chair, and through the rest of the board to evaluate these candidates, review their qualifications, and ultimately come to a decision. So I certainly appreciate the work of everybody on the board for this.
And we appreciate your leadership, Dan.
Well, I think we've made a great choice here, folks, and I think that this is the right person to move us to the next level. So we should all feel good about that. I certainly do, and Lynn, I know you do as well.
Yes, very much so.
All right. There being no other matters coming before the board today, this meeting of the California High-Speed Rail Authority Board will be adjourned.